All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this trade training part 2. We did not have enough time for the first trade training, so we are extending it out and doing this second session for today, this afternoon. So we appreciate your flexibility and your adaptability as these sessions, the schedules kind of changed a little bit. So we just appreciate you making the time on your calendars to join us for this training today. So I'm going to start us off with a couple housekeeping items. First, my name is Kirsten Bayer with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University, and I will be your technical assistance and support on this session. So feel free to reach out to me via the chat if you need anything. You can also reach out to me via email, and I'll put my email in the chat momentarily here if you need anything during the session or even after the session. And then I did want to reiterate that this session is being recorded if you need to view it at a later date or if a colleague needs you to send it to them. And I did go ahead and put that website in the chat in the waiting room, but I'll put it in the chat once again just so you have it fresh in the chat for you during this session. And then I believe Sheila said that she did send out all the material for today on the calendar invite earlier this morning. And if you don't have that access to that, please feel free to reach out to me and we'll get you access to that. And all of those materials and the recording will be up on the website on Illinois WorkNet. Again, I'll put that website in the chat momentarily here. And then also, if you would like to, for your note-taking purposes or for accessibility reasons, please feel free to put the live closed captioning on. We do have that enabled, and you can do that by clicking live transcript on your Zoom toolbar and clicking enable, and it will enable it on your screen. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Sheila, and she can kind of take us away with the second part of the trade training.
Okay. Thank you, Kirsten. Appreciate everything you guys are doing for us at coordinating these meetings, recording them, and getting them posted. So we could not get through all of the trade training information last week. So as Kirsten said, we added this session today, and I appreciate everyone jumping on a Tuesday. Basically what we're going to cover today, I don't have any PowerPoint slides or anything. We're going to go through the forms that are required for training approval and the instructional documents that I've put together for you. So you won't have to see a PowerPoint, so don't be worried if you don't see one. The first form we're going to cover is the most important form for the training enrollment for the approval. As my system cooperates. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can see it, Sheila.
Okay. Uh-oh. No, hold on. It says it's paused. Hold on. Let me see what we got going on here. There we go. Okay. Okay, so the first form that we're going to cover is what we call Form 6, which is also called the Verification of Trade Training Enrollment. The first part of the form is the participant information, the Iep, that's serving the participant, the last four of their social. The date is the date that the form is being filled out, and then the participant information, their name, their address, and their phone numbers and email address. I've highlighted a couple of areas on this form. The first one is box 11, for the U.S. citizenship. If this is marked yes, then you do not have to complete anything else in this box. You go down to number 12. If you mark no, then you need to answer the question, is the person authorized to work in the U.S., yes or no, and provide the expiration date on the authorized to work documentation that you would have for them. Just a note, if the expiration date here is prior to the planned end date of training, then the training cannot be approved. So they must complete any kind of training before this expiration date, or we will not be able to approve it. So keep that in mind. Sometimes we see people marking yes and no, or they mark yes and then they mark yes, authorized to work. Just keep in mind, if you mark yes, do not fill out this one. If you mark no, then you must complete this part over here. The next section on the form is about the training program itself. And all of these forms that I'm going to show you, they're on WorkNet. These are the versions that are on WorkNet as of today. I pulled them off of WorkNet this morning or yesterday. And there also is a set of instructions that go along with each of these forms that goes line by line, exactly what to complete on these forms. So please use those instructions. If you see anything that doesn't match up, please let us know and we'll make the corrections that need to be made on them. The next section is the training program information. This is where you put the information about the training institution, the address, phone number for the training institution, and the name of the training program. Sometimes the LEAs will have the training institution fill out this whole section. Sometimes the career planner will fill out part of it and the training institution will fill out the rest. It doesn't really matter as long as it all gets filled out. The name of the training program that the person is going to be enrolling in. And then question 19 kind of gets a little confused sometimes by some of the career, not necessarily the career planners, but sometimes the training institutions. But we separated it because it was one big long line before. So prerequisite classes, are there any that are required to complete this program that they're enrolling in? And I put a little note, we put a little note in here that says classes required to be completed prior to acceptance into the program, because prerequisites in trade are exactly that. It is not taking like the 100 version of a class before you can take the 200 version of the class. So, keep in mind to watch this. If a training institution does mark yes, then Susan and I and Lori, when we're reviewing these, would expect to see a prerequisite training service line in Iwds if this is marked yes. Same thing for remedial. If they're marked yes, we would expect to see those training service lines entered. So just keep in mind when you're reviewing these after the training institution has filled these out, if they fill out this section, just be mindful of what they're completing here and if it looks right or not based on your information that you have regarding the training program the participant's going to work on completing. Number 20, what industry recognized credential will be obtained upon completion? What kind of a credential they're going to get from the training program, or if there's not one for this particular program, then just state that none. And have they been accepted into this program? This will need to be filled out by the training institution itself. Is it a full-time program, a part-time program, yes or no? And what is the start date of the training and the planned end date of the training? And these are the dates that we would expect to see in Iwds on the training service line record. And then the authorized training provider, name, title, and then their signature. And we have a note here, that is verification. That's what they're signing, the verification that the person has been accepted into that program that's listed above. So, keep that in mind. We also have in here that the training provider agrees to provide the local area with class schedules, grades, progress reports, attendance reports, billing information, and program outcome documentation. So if a participant is not following up with you to give their grades, class schedules, or their outcome documentation like a diploma or certification, you have the training provider's signature here verifying that they are signing that they will provide that information. So you can definitely contact the training provider to get those certificates and credentials or anything like that. Those are very helpful because you can show someone successfully completing a training program, but without the credential, we don't get complete credit for everything that you have done with that participant and everything that participant has accomplished through the program. So we want to get those certificates and credentials whenever they complete a program. And then there's a certification by the participant. They will sign the date this form. It just basically says, they're going to comply with the rules, and, there's a big statement about theft and that kind of stuff. So make sure they're aware of what they're signing. Again, here's the appeal rights that we've said there are on most of our forms that there's a determination made on. So here's the appeal rights for the participant. And then the second page is for the staff use only, which is your career planners. So has the LEA approved the training program, yes or no? Are there extenuating circumstances that are being applied here to meet this enrollment for this participant. And if there are, you would need to mark the appropriate one and give the reason for it. The printed name of the career planner's signature, and the date. What we like to see is the date that the career planner signs this is the date that you're submitting it for approval for state merit staff. And basically this date here is within 30 days of this start date of the training. That's what we like to see. For a waiver, you know, this form needs to be completed. You don't necessarily have to have the career planner's signature and that on this form at that point, but at the point when you do submit for revocation of the waiver and approval of the training program, that is when you would need, the career planner would need to sign this form. Are there any questions on that particular form? Okay, everybody has that form down. That was not too bad. Okay, so let me get the next one up. Okay, can everybody see the transportation subsistence form? Okay, so this is a challenging form in itself to complete. This is the one that is used, as you can see above, for any travel that is approved on or after September 21st of 2020. So anybody that's coming in and starting a new training program, this is the form that you'll need. There are two versions of this Form 5 out there. One of them is for travel approved on prior to September 21st of 2020. They are named differently. The other one is eligibility determination for trade travel assistance, I believe is what the name of it is. I forget right now. But just keep in mind, make sure you grab the correct form. And it will say at the top what the applicable date is involved for that form. So the top part's the same as the other forms that we have. You know, the participant information, their name, address, and then you've got the training information. So what is their estimated training period? So the start and planned end dates. And when you're filling these out, make sure that you're keeping in mind these should all be the same dates that you've got on all forms. You know, make sure all the dates are the same across all the forms. If you've got like the training period or anything like that, just make sure those match up. Box 7 is the total number of on-site training days. This one gets confused by people. So this is the number of on-site training days that is estimated at the point that you're completing this form. You know, how many, this is for the entire training program. So you're estimating this person's going to go to training for 3 days a week for, you know, whatever period of time, however many weeks. Then you're going to multiply those two together and you're going to get your number. It's not the number per week. It is the total number of the entire training program, which is your total training weeks times the number of days per week the participant is going to be attending or estimated at this time. This will fluctuate. It could change. You know, they may change to 4 days a week one semester, or they may go 2 days a week another semester. It'll fluctuate, but at least in an estimate that you've got at the point that you're completing this is what we want. So what kind of training are they attending? Are they going to attend on-site? Are they going to do online? You know, and some people may do both. And then if there's an out-of-state option as well. If someone is going to an out-of-state training plan or program, then you would skip all the way to box number 23 on the next page to complete that section, because that is the out-of-state transportation subsistence calculation, because there's a couple of factors that go into that when calculating that type of training plan. You know, their lodging is involved and meals and incidental costs. So if they're attending at one training site, then mark this box. If there's multiple training sites, then you would mark this box. And it tells you if they're training at one site, then continue on to number 10, which is right below. And if they're training at multiple training sites, then you will continue on to box 22, which is a multiple location information section, and you can put in all the different locations that they're going to and the different trips that they may be taking. Some people attend different training institutions and they'll go on a certain trip one day, and the next day they go on a different one, and the third day they go back to the trip one that they took. So just keep that in mind when you're filling this out. If they do go to multiple training sites, you can do it all on this form as well. But if they're doing one training site, you're going to put in your training institution here in box 10 and the address, city, state, zip for that training institution site. And then you'll continue on to box 15. Box 15, 16, and 17 get, they're a little tricky sometimes, and people kind of get a little confused with them sometimes. So I just want to walk through these. This form also does have a set of instructions that should be helpful in filling it out. The distance of the participant's one-way commute. So this needs to be documented with a Google Maps printout or a Google Maps site. And what you will do is you're going to take that to the first decimal place. So if it's 25.4, you're going to put 25.4 in here. This is the one-way commute. So from their residence to that training site. If Google Maps, for some reason, does not show the exact location, and I've had it do that to me before, you can use one of these other sites, MapQuest, Rand McNally, or another site that you can find that location at. But if you do use the other, we need to know what one you're using. And you do have to have the printouts from any of the site that you use. But Google Maps is the preferred one unless Google Maps does not show that particular location. So the net commuting distance, because of the new trade rules that we have to subtract the first 10 miles. So the net commuting distance is your one-way commute here in box 15 minus 10. So whatever that is, so in my example, I said 25.4, then in this box, that would be 15.4 in this box. And then you go to box 17. So is the participant attending on-site training? Yes or no, okay? Is the net commuting distance more than 0 miles? So is box 16 more than 0? Yes. If box 16 actually, when you do the calculation, becomes a negative number, just put 0 in here. Negative, you don't need to put negative numbers, just put 0. So yes or no. So if both questions are yes, that's great. You know, you're going to continue on to box 18. If the net commuting distance, is the net commuting distance more than 0 miles? Yes. Okay. So yes to both questions, then fine. If no is answered to either one of these questions, so the participant is not attending on-site training, or the net commuting distance is 0 or less, no. So if one of these is no, the participant is not eligible for transportation assistance in this case because they're not going on site, so they're not eligible because of that, or the net commuting distance is not more than 10 miles one way. So they are not eligible for trade transportation assistance. If WIOA in your area wants to pick up that mileage reimbursement for this participant, they can certainly do that, but trade cannot if that distance is not more than 0 miles. So then if that is the case, if they're not eligible, skip all the way to the bottom of the form to number 28. But if they are and they are eligible, you're going to do your calculations. So to calculate your mileage reimbursement, you're going to put your net commuting distance from box 16 right here. And then your round trip distance then is this box A times 2. And then you're going to get your federal mileage rate from GSA.gov, unless you know it, which right now it is 0.56. It's probably going to change here in a couple weeks. It usually changes in January each year. And then what you're going to do then is calculate your mileage reimbursement, the daily mileage reimbursement, which is box C times B. And that will be your daily mileage reimbursement rate. You will also, if available, if this is an option in your local area, if there's some sort of public mass transit, some sort of train, I've never seen anybody put an air transportation in here, but it's in the regulations, or some other mode of transportation, put those costs in here. And whichever one of these is the lesser cost of any of these four is what you will put here. Your subsistence cost, you'll get your GSA lodging rate and your GSA meals and incidentals rate. These rates are based on the training institution location right here. So it's by city. So that's what you need to go get from gsa.gov, the rates for your training institution, for your lodging, and then your meals and incidentals. If you come across a set of rates where one month it's this amount and the next month it shows that it changes, just use whatever the month, the starting month of the training starts, unless it's going to affect any of this, which most of the time subsistence cost does not affect the daily reimbursement rate. Most people will get the mileage in most cases. If you got questions, you can reach out to me. Susan hates math, so it's probably best to reach out to me, and she'll tell you that herself. But what you'll do is you'll add A and B together to get a total, and then you're going to divide that number by 2. And that is your daily subsistence cost. Then what you're going to do, you're going to take 18D, 19E, and 20D. You're going to compare all of those numbers. Whichever one of these is the lesser cost, except for the case of if any of these are 0, like this middle one, if this is 0, you just ignore it. If 18D or 20D, whichever one is less, and if 19E has a number in it, whichever one's less out of the 3 is what goes right here, that figure. Do not multiply one of these by anything. So, oh wait, that is where you do calculation. Okay, so I'm sorry, I misspoke. So this is your total transportation subsistence cost, and you round it to the nearest cent, okay? So you're going to take the lesser of these amounts, whichever one's lesser, unless it's a 0 in one of these boxes, then you'll just take that one out of the equation. So most of the times we're just going to assume it's 18D because that is what happens in most cases. So 18D, and you're going to multiply it times the number that's in box 7. That is going to be what your transportation subsistence cost is when you're filling out your 6 conditions case note, when you're filling out all the information that says, what are my transportation costs? That is what this is the number you're going to use. So anybody have any questions about that part of it? Okay. So if you have a multiple location person, you've got up to 4 location addresses that you can put in here. And so the first site, so they go from residence to, you can put training location 1 in here, LOC 1, whatever you want to do to make it simple for you or whatever, so we can identify where they're going. And then like the second leg of the trip, they're going from location 1 to location 3 or something like that. Just fill out however many legs of the trip that they have for that particular trip 1. And, obviously the last one, whatever box, is, when they go back to the residence, then on the 2 thing, it should be residence. So, and we've got the residence address information over here. So you do not have to put residence address in here at all. This is only training location sites. Then you're going to do your net round trip miles. So you're going to have to do a Google Maps showing at least the one-way mileage. Some people do them with their total round trip, but you have to take your total round trip miles and subtract 20. So you've got to take out both the 10 miles on both legs of the trip at the beginning and the end, or whatever that trip calculation is. Then you put in your mileage GSA rate here, and you're going to multiply these 2 together to get your mileage reimbursement for the daily rate. And then your number of training days from number 7 is right here. And then you're going to multiply this one, the mileage reimbursement rate, and your training days to get your total transportation for that particular trip 1. If you've got a trip 2, you'll do the same thing for trip 2. If there's another day or another scenario where they're going to be traveling to different locations on a different part of their training during that semester, and also trip 3. I don't know of anybody that's had more than 3. If you do, talk to me, we can work through that. And then your total transportation for each of these trips. And what you're going to do, if there's multiples, you're going to take this last box here for each one of these and add them up. And then that's going to be your total transportation cost for the multiple location person, if they're traveling to multiple locations. For out of state, you're going to do a similar calculation as you do for a single location transportation. There are a couple of questions that need to be answered. So how are the lodging costs being paid? There's 3 different scenarios that we have seen. Either they're going to be paid directly to the training institution, and if that's the case, then you do not include the lodging rate in number 9. What I said is number 9A below. That's wrong. I'll have to fix that. But you do not include the lodging rate in for your subsistence calculation. If it's paid directly to another third party, then you would include the lodging rate in number 26A below. Okay, this is 26A. So, or actually, so then if it's paid by the participant, which we don't see very often, most of the time we'll see it paid directly to the training institution or to a third party, then you do include the lodging rate. If you come across a participant that is in this scenario, reach out to us. We've had a few. We haven't had any for at least 3 years that I'm aware of, but we can help you complete this section. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to do your mileage reimbursement because the participant does get paid for their mileage to the training site location outside of their commuting area on day 1 and on the return. And then they will get the lesser of 25 or 26. So whatever the calculated subsistence cost is from the GSA rates or the actual cost that they incurred while attending training at that site. So they're going to get the lesser of these here for the total time that they were in training, and they're going to get the round trip mileage to the training site and back. So we can help you calculate this. It gets a little tricky depending on how these questions are answered and some other factors. We've seen, the lodging is part of the tuition cost paid to the training institution, or, however it's done. But, just reach out to us. We'll work with it if you have anybody like that. And then the last section of the form is the certification. Please be mindful, 28 and 29 need to be both marked. We have seen cases where one line is marked but not the other. So the participant is eligible or not eligible for the transportation subsistence assistance. So mark whichever one is applicable. And then 29, I've been determined eligible. I understand I must verify my attendance and training to receive this. Or they understand that they have been determined not eligible. Then there's the certification for the participant that they need to sign, authorizing that, everything's correct to the best of their ability. They're not intending to commit fraud, and they would date it. Here's the appeal rights again for them, for the participants if they disagree with the determination, and your LWIA career planner signature and date. And when you upload this form, we do expect to see the Google Maps printout that supports the mileage that you are saying this person miles, the one-way commute or the round-trip commute for this person that is filled out in this section, or over here for a multiple location. Any questions on this form? Okay. Moving on. Let's get the next one. All right. Let me go. Okay, let me go to my share. The next form that we're going to talk about is the tracking form. This is the program tracking form. There are two different tracking forms that can be used depending on the type of program that the person is enrolled in. This particular form, this is the 6D. This one is geared towards someone who's attending training at like a community college, you know, a university, something like that, where there's a set regimen of courses they take, like a certain semester and then another semester. There's several semesters of, you know, like 3 or 4 courses for each semester. The first part of it is we need the participant name. What date is this being filled out? What's the name of the training program? Are they taking any remedial prerequisites? Yes or no? And is it an occupational training program? So total credits required, that is usually obtained from the catalog or whatever, the training institution information that they have that says this is the total credits required to complete this program. So that needs to be filled in there. What is the total training weeks? And you know, when you're filling all this out, make sure that these numbers, dates, and that kind of stuff, make sure they match up with all the other forms. We've had some that don't match up by exact numbers or dates or anything. So just be mindful of that when you're completing all these forms. The training start date and training program end date, the estimated date that you have in the system. So one thing that we see is box 11 is not filled out correctly every time. There are, you can see in this here, there are little boxes in front of each of these words, fall, spring, summer. Mark which semester this is that you're listing these classes for. And after the 20, you can see that there's a little box. So this should be 2022. So like the one coming up would be, you mark the spring here and then put 22 after the 20. So is the class required or is it an elective? What's the course number, the course title, and how many credit hours? So when the person completes it, if you have a semester of 4 courses listed here for spring of 2022, and they complete these 3, but this 4th one, they couldn't get in the class, so they registered for another one, and you put that other class here, or it was listed down here, you do not have to redo this whole entire form. As long as the class is listed on this form that they took for that semester, then go to that line, wherever it is, if it's over here, put the semester and the year that they did complete it, like SP for spring, SU for summer, you know, FA for fall, and the year, and then put their grade. You don't have to, you know, you can, some people do mark it out over here and they add it over here, that's fine. If they took it in this semester, they move them around, but you do not have to complete the whole form, but you also do not have to mark them out and move them over. You can just fill it out on whatever line that class happens to be listed on. We just want to make sure that the participant is taking all their required courses that they need to, you know, and they may change electives or things like that. So you will need to add the elective in and mark that one out if that does change. But this form must be updated as the semester is completed. Fill in this semester and year that they completed it and their grades as you go along, because we will ask for this to be uploaded if you're making changes to the training plan, you're extending it, things like that. You know, this will have to be uploaded, and if you don't have these boxes filled in for their completion information, then we will ask for that as well. This one does not contain the appeal rights. There are 4 pages you can complete here. You can put comments on here. This one only has the career planner's signature and the date. There's no appeal rights on here. That the participant doesn't really need to be involved in this particular form itself. This is the career planner's tool and ours, because we want to make sure that these participants are getting the courses they're supposed to in the right order, and we're not going to bump up against like a, you know, they're running out of allowable training weeks and they have not gotten their courses. The career planner needs this as a tool to make sure these people are on track. You know, you need to use this, make sure these people are getting their courses, you know, so that they can complete. That is part of your role as the career planner, to ensure that they are doing what they're supposed to do to get this training program completed. But this form is, you know, it's not very extensive. It does have a lot of information on it. But so just be mindful of keeping that updated every semester as someone completes courses and gets grades. In addition to this form, there's another tracking form that is geared more towards, where we see this a lot is your IT type of programs where they'll attend like Excel training this week for 3 days, then they're done with that one. The next week they attend some, I don't know, Scrum or Agile or something. There's all kinds of different courses. But if there's going to be like kind of a break in between the courses, you know, maybe a week break or something like that, you know, you're going to put your course, you're going to do the same thing, the participant name, their training program, the total credits required, how many training weeks, the beginning and end dates of the training program. And then you're going to list each of the courses separately on here. So we have room for several of them. I saw couple of people, they had to add another form. If you do have more than what we have listed, just make a copy of this page here and just add them in here. Course name, course location, the dates that it's going to be held, and did they successfully complete it. So please keep this updated. Things change, but if there is a break in between classes, you know, like say they complete a class on Thursday of this week and they don't start, they're not going to attend any classes next week, but the following Monday they're going to attend a class, then you need to be putting in that payable training interruption in between those courses, because that way that is not counting against their you know, actual like training weeks that they're in training. So, you know, just be mindful of that if there are any breaks of like a week, you know, and the weeks are considered Sunday to Saturday. So just keep that in mind. And if you've got any questions about it, you know, reach out to us. We'll help you through it. But this is what we would use for anybody who's in like, that's just a series of courses. A lot of people for CDL will fill out the Form D because it's just like one program, and they won't use this one. They will do the Form B, which makes more sense for that program. Okay, so then we have, so for training, one thing, one of the more important things that needs to be completed for a training program is the 6 criterion for approval of training case note. So we're going to go through that right now. And this is different than what you are probably used to seeing or using. We went through the new regs that came out last year, and we have developed, excuse me for a moment. We've developed this case note to align with each of the criteria as they are outlined in, excuse me, as they are outlined in the new trade regulations. So the items you see here highlighted in yellow, you will replace that information with the applicable information for the case note for the participant you are working with. If you are going to be using equitable tolling, then you will add this statement here right at the beginning of the case note. You know, requesting approval, invoking equitable tolling because, and you're going to provide a justification for using the equitable tolling. So for criteria 1, this is what we would like. We want the case note to look just like this. There's no suitable employment available for the participant. That is the criterion. And so what you're going to do is you're going to replace this first part with the participant name. You know, John Doe appears on the official company layoff list for list the company name on certification number, which is the petition number, certification number, petition number. They call it certification. Some people still call it petition. So participant name was laid off on, put their date of separation, the verified date of separation, the qualifying separation that has been verified with Iwds. And they worked in the capacity of, put their job title that they were laid off from. And that making enter their salary rate that they were earning at that trade impacted employment. The LMI, which is labor market information for this trade impacted occupation, shows, and get that information from ONET. What is the percentage decline or growth for that trade impacted occupation? And the participant has transferable skills that include, and you're going to list their transferable skills that are on that transferable skills checklist that you would have had them fill out when they're doing the IEP with them. The barriers to employment include, they're going to have barriers to employment that are going to be listed on your IEP that you've gained through the assessment of the participant. Put those in. The participant has, and then if they have any education, degrees, certificates, GED, anything like that, what is their education information? What kind of degrees or certifications have they achieved? The participant has provided adequate documentation of job search efforts, and that's through various sets of documents. I know Iwds has a specific document that they can fill out proving their what job search that they have completed, to reflect no success in securing employment with the current skills. Now, and then some of this could change here, like none of the participants' leads have resulted in an interview, or you would change that to reflect information on anything, like if the participant has attended any interviews, what was the outcome, things like that. Because some people may have gotten a job between the time they were laid off and the time they're coming in to seek services. They may be working part-time. The participant is unable to obtain self-sufficient employment without further training due to, and identify the reasons. Like some people, they just don't have the education, or they lack a certification, or they're lacking some sort of a transferable skill to be able to do the job in the employment area that they want to do. And then additional training is needed to increase skills to obtain suitable employment. So that's Criterion 1. Now, Criterion 2 is the participant would benefit from appropriate training. That's the criterion. There's a whole set of things. You can look at them in the trade regulations to see what all it says about this particular criterion and what they want to see, and we base it based on that information in the regs. So participant name has completed labor market research in the area. What's the name of the training program that they're interested in, and they've concluded that employment will be available in that field. They've been unsuccessful in the path of securing employment with the current transferable skills or level of education. The participant will benefit by completing the training program to increase their marketable skills and become more competitive in the workforce. The outcome of successfully obtaining employment will be significantly increased by completing, put the name of the training program or certificate or degree, whatever that program is, and then you're going to talk about their assessment. The assessments indicate the participant has the necessary skills, abilities, and interest in the chosen field of training for. You're going to name the occupational field that they're going to go into. The participant's lack of, and you identify the reason for not meeting self-sufficiency, like they're lacking education or credentials to be able to do this job, or transferable skills. That contributes to the need for additional training to assist them to obtain those marketable skills and become more competitive. So the yellow stuff you would put the information related to that participant in there, but the rest of it, you can just copy this just like it is. I kept it in Word, so you can just copy it, paste it, create one, and then work with it from here on out. Criterion 3 is there is a reasonable expectation of employment following completion of such training. So you're going to talk about the labor market research, the name of the training program, and then you're going to list your ONET percentage of increase. What does that ONET say? Sometimes ONET may reflect like a negative thing on a nationwide level, but in your area, those are an in-demand job. So you kind of talk about that here. If for some reason ONET is not showing a growth, but in your area it is, you're going to have to document that with something that you can find in your area about what kind of jobs are available for your particular area. Participant was able to identify 3 or 5 or however many potential employers that may have job openings. You do that through job listings in your area. And so what is the average hourly rate from the occupation? I think ONET usually has that kind of information on there. And then the next area you are going to have to just put the information in specific to your customer. So the training is So you're going to select one of the things. It's either in a demand occupation or a limited demand occupation or self-employment. So one of those three. Which one is it? So if it is a limited demand occupation, then you're going to have to provide support for wherever they're going to locate or be, what area they're going to work in, that they can expect to have employment opportunities available to them after they complete that training program. If it is an occupation that leaves as self-employment, then you will have to support that the self-employment does provide them or lead them to wages or earnings that were equal to or above what they were earning at their trade and affected employment. Now, the next part is about OJT. If it is an OJT, then you have to provide some sort of support that the OJT is going to lead to suitable employment with that employer where they are doing the OJT. And then for 2021R participants, this is where you're going to answer the question about the work-based learning opportunities that were researched or are available in the area. And if you do not select one of those, then you have to provide a justification for not selecting that work-based opportunity. And that's only for the 2021R participants, the ones that are served under a petition 98,000 or above. So keep that in mind. Criterion 3 has a lot of little extra stuff, you know, that we can't put the generic language in. You'll have to add that information related to your participant. Number 4 is the simplest one. It's the shortest one. Training is reasonably available to the participant. So they're requesting to attend training at this training institution. They're going to attend in person or online or some sort of a hybrid type of a situation. It's full-time or part-time. And this is how far one way they reside from the training institution. And this is how many round trip distance miles they are from the training institution. So, you know, it's reasonably available to them. And condition 5, the participant is qualified to undertake and complete such training. This talks about their, you know, what kind of scores did they get on their assessment tests, you know, basic skills assessments, math and reading. What are the interest and ability assessment results, you know, and list what assessment tool you use to get those interest and abilities from. You know, what kind of aptitude areas did they score highest in? So based on these assessments, then they have the abilities and interest and skills so they can do this occupation that they've selected. They have adequate transportation, or, you know, they don't need transportation because, you know, it's online or something like that. This is how many number of weeks is it going to take to complete the training. And then we want in here this BPE date, which you can find on the Iwds documentation that you will upload as well, your TRA claim details and the determination inquiry for the UI. And they have this many number of weeks of UI TRA remaining, and you can get that from Iwds. And if you can't locate it, then you can reach out to IDES to get that. We have to know this so we know that they're going to be able to have access to funding to be able to go to training. And then you're going to choose one of these statements between the next two based on that participant situation. So either, you know, after you talk about the weeks of remaining UI or TRA, this is enough weeks to allow the participant to complete the training, or the remaining weeks of UI TRA will not cover the total training period. And if that's the case, then the participant has to identify that they have adequate financial resources to allow them to complete that training program without that UI or TRA. If they don't have enough remaining weeks of UI TRA and cannot demonstrate that they have that, then we cannot approve the training. So keep that in mind when you're working with these people. They have to be able to, you know, show that they can support themselves to complete that training if they're not going to have enough UI or TRA to cover them through the whole training plan. And number 6 is where we talk about the cost. Such training is suitable for the participant and available at a reasonable cost. The total estimated cost of training at this institution is total, okay? And you break it down, which includes tuition, books, academic fees, uniforms, blah. Necessary equipment, supplies, tools, including, so you're going to list your equipment, like such as a computer, what kind of tools are they going to need, etc. Any special supplies or something of this. Their transportation or subsistence amount. If there's any licensing or certification tests and fees, then you'll list those here. And then you're going to say there are or there are not or no associated residences or internships for this training program. And if you do choose that there are a residence or internship, then you need to list the residence or internship and the cost for that as well. And then you have to compare the cost. You need to compare total cost for 2 other institutions. So cost comparisons were conducted for the same program at, Training Institution 1 and Training Institution 2. The total costs for Training Institution 1 are this. The total costs for Training Institution 2 are this. And then if you're not choosing the lowest cost option, then you must provide a justification for selection of the training institution that is not the least expensive, and just state why. So we've seen placement rates, we've seen completion rates, we've seen it's closer, the transportation is less or something, but the tuition may be higher, whatever, but justify it as to why they want to go to that particular training institution, even though it's not the least cost option. And then Criterion 7 is an Illinois requirement only, although it's basically for the industry recognized credential that this person's going to earn at the completion of this training. We are asking for it up front. That is, if case the person would need to get completion TRA towards the end of their program. And if they don't get an industry recognized credential from their training program, then they will not be eligible for completion TRA. So, and if this training program is not going to result in an industry recognized credential, then you need to state that in that case note that you're doing this. So this is what we are expecting from this point on that the case notes should look like. So keep that in mind when you're doing this. I know they're lengthy. A lot of people, I believe, keep this in Word. They have a generic one, and they just use the same one every time. Just be mindful that if you are saving this in Word and just copy pasting, make sure you do change the participant names in all the areas that it needs to be changed. We've had some that have different participant names and different criterion or things like that. So just be mindful of all of that. And I mean, that is exactly what I would do. I would just have this in Word and I would fill in the information for that participant, and then I would just copy paste it into Iwds when you're doing the case note for the 6 criterion, because I'm not going to sit there and type that whole thing over and over every time. Any questions on the questions? Let me get back. Let me see the first question here. Okay, let's see. All right, regarding the necessity of exploring work-based learning opportunities for 2021 clients, what do we do if the deadline for enrolling in classroom training is closed? We say they have to explore WBL, they may miss the enrollment deadline. Well, that's part of working with that participant ahead of time. Susan answered a little bit of that. We don't want them to miss those deadlines. Just, like she said, kind of have a general idea of what's in your area and available to people in case someone does come in and they're pushing up against that deadline. Let's see. Do we need to include training comparisons if the customer is already enrolled in the training program we are submitting for approval? We're going to have to get back to you on that, Olivia. We'll put that in the chat Q&A. Yeah, and Paige, in answer to your question, frequently we do not know at the start of the program where an internship site is going to be at the end of the program. How should we handle it? I mean, if you know there's an internship that is going to happen, you can definitely identify that there is one. And, you may not know the cost at this point. I mean, if you can estimate something, but you can always modify it later to include that cost. But as long as you list it in your criterion, and you can state that the specific site and costs are not known at this time, but you'll modify it later when those are known, you can do that. Could you discuss considerations we should apply when someone requests a new computer? Well, there's a lot of situations now where people are attending online and they have to have a computer to do that. If they can prove that they do not have a computer available to them, or they had one, but it was their kid's computer and now they have to have it, or their computer broke, something like that. If it's needed for them to complete that training program, then we can certainly consider approval. We just want to make sure that we are giving them the computer that meets the needs of the training program, but not something that's excessive. Like, you know, because some programs like those graphic design programs, they need a lot of software and they need a computer that has massive, you know, availability of memory and, you know, storage space on the hard drive and that. You know, we don't want to give somebody one of those when they're just doing like accounting or something like that. So it just kind of has to meet the needs of the person, and the best way is just submit a request and ask us, and we'll look at it and just justify it however, you know, you can, if you know that you feel that person needs that computer. So for number 6, what do we put in if it is an OJT and there are no other training institutions? Well, if it's an OJT, there are no other training institutions. You would just put that they're doing an OJT. You know, it's a demand occupation or whatever. You know, up in number 3. So number 6, you know, you wouldn't have any comparisons for any other training institution. It's just going to be whatever the cost of that OJT is estimated to be, based on the agreement that you've completed. Okay, so I think I've covered the questions now. Hopefully I can say the same thing back in the chat when we post it. So that was all of the forms and the case note. I'm going to go through some instructional documents that I have here. The main thing we see a lot of times, and you were given all of these things that I'm going through, I sent out today. I hope you all got them. I did the reply to all on the invite email. So I hope you got them. So this is like the instructional document. You've seen these. I've covered a couple of these in the last couple of trainings. I'm using the PDF version because it just is a bigger information here to look at. So this is how you would go through entering an occupational skills training and submitting it for approval to state merit staff. So of course you're going to complete your trade IEP, and you know, here I've got a little note here about if you go to the training on 10/28 of 21 that we covered eligibility and enrollment, that has got the that's got the IEP form that we did with the instructions for each section. We included them right below each section. So those are the specific instructions you can follow on completing that IEP. And then if this is the initial service, this person just came in, you're doing the IEP, and you're going to enroll them in training all at the same time. So the initial service of IEP has not already been state merit staff approved. This is all the same as it was for all of the other instructional documents, for the waiver and all of that stuff. You're going to enter your IEP service record through your list enrolled services on your application menu for that trade application for the participant. It shows up as TAA application in Iwds, but you're going to click on this list enrolled services, and then you're going to click on add enrolled service, and then on the next one you're going to select TAA for your title, and you're going to click next. And when you get to the next screen, then you're going to select individual employment plan, and you're going to put the start date, whatever date, you know, you're trying to get this started, whatever date you're working with this person and you're starting this IEP, and you're going to click next. And then you're going to complete the information on this screen. This is the IEP service record for this participant. And I will tell you, this information is strictly in the test system. This is not a real person. If you're pretty savvy, you'll know that Steve Perry sang for Journey, and that has to be my favorite group of all time. So, you know, kind of stole his name for this. And your provider, you know, you're going to fill out all this information. This should be filled in. It'll probably be your local area listed here. You're going to search for the ONET code. And then your start date will be in here. You're going to have a current status of open. And when you get done filling this out, then you're going to click save. And that will set up the IEP service record in the system. And what it will do is it will transfer you immediately to the IEP status record. And then you will need to complete this part. Do not skip this step. Once you complete this status, it does set this status record to a pending approval. And so you'll need to go through and finish the rest of the information and then submit it to state merit staff for approval. Because you don't want an IEP service record hanging out there and then no status record to go along with it, because the person's just in limbo, and are you really working with that person? If we see that, well, that's what we will be wondering. Well, what are you really doing with that person if you're not, if you didn't put in a status, but you got a service? That just doesn't make sense to us. So your status start date will be the same as your, date of your IEP service. And you're just going to put a comment in here. Always put the date first, establishing IEP for customer, whatever. Or if you're enrolling them in training right at the same time, then you can put enrollment in training. You do not have to put your whole entire 6-condition case note or a big whole lengthy note. You can just say, enrolling in such and such training program, see case note dated such and such for 6 criterion for approval. Because this box is limited to an extent. It has a lot of space in it, but we did have a couple people run up against not having enough space to do a modification one time. So you don't have to put the whole story in here, just a comment about what you're doing though, and make it kind of specific. If you know your IEP amount, then you can put that in here that you have estimated at that time, and then you'll click save to set this up as a pending IEP status. If you already have an IEP in the system and it's been approved by state merit staff, then what you're doing is an IEP modification for this. And how you do that is you would click on this list TAA status on your application menu for that participant for the trade application. And beside the IEP, you're going to click view, and that will open up your IEP status record.
All done?
And once you have,
Thank goodness. I need to get away from the Zoom meeting for a few minutes.
do what?
Well, I'll stick it in your file. Go ahead. Yeah, here for a second.
Okay, whoever's talking, mute your phone. So you're going to update your IEP status record, and how you do that is a date in the comment box. Requesting approval for enrollment in training. Here's, I said, see case note, data, for details. So there you go. And I put my IEP amount approved in here. If you do not do either one of these and then you hit save, then you cannot get back in here and do it. You will have to have Susan and I enter that information at the point that we approve it. So keep that in mind. Just before you hit save, make sure you have the date first and the note and IEP amount approved if that's what you have at that point and that's what you're doing for the modification. So then click save. That will set it up as a pending status, and I don't have that out. I don't have it out here. It won't really show it on the TAA status screen, but when we go into the IEP, we will see that. There will be a box down here that will look like this, but it will not have the approved on here. So that's what we will see when we go in to approve it. And then since this is a modification, you're going to update the paper IEP Modification Form 14A. It is out there on WorkNet. It's the IEP Modification Form. You're going to fill out any information that is applicable to this change. You're going to do your participant name. You're going to do the modification number. What's the date of the request? When does it take effect? What is the reason for the modification? So you can mark multiple boxes here. In this case, we're doing an additional service because we're adding the occupational skills training. So you will mark additional services and put in this box here for list services. You're going to put adding occupational skills training. Okay. And then, there's various different modifications that we will cover on Thursday. So how does this modification affect the total IEP cost? Does it increase it? Does it decrease? No change? And what is the new total IEP amount? Well, it obviously in this case will probably increase it because you're adding training to this IEP and you put the new IEP amount in. What documentation supports this modification? Is there training institution documentation? Is the participant documentation or a request? Was a file audit? What other documentation do you have to support this? This could be, the participant documentation request, could be for adding training, they want to go training. Then we have a section here on CRA eligibility. I do not have the whole IEP modification form here. We will cover that on Thursday when we go through that. We added this recently because we're going to need to know the number of TRA weeks paid so far. How many do they have left? You know, do they have enough left to complete this training? And if no, have they demonstrated financial resources to support themselves to complete that training? So this is a new section to this form. And then when you're doing a new enrollment in training and new occupational skills training or whatever training they're going into, you will need the Form 6 that we covered earlier. You'll need the Form 5 along with the Google Maps printout supporting that mileage. You'll need to complete one of the tracking forms, either the 6D or the 6E, as appropriate for their particular program. And then you're going to do your case management services in Iwds. And this is the same as all of the others. It'll either be on the WIOA or trade application based on the following: a participant covered by certifications up to $97,999. That is going to go on the trade application. And so I've got in here the information on initially entering a trade case management service. That's done through enrolled services on the application menu for the trade application for the participant. And then you're going to add your enrolled service, select your TAA for your title, and then you're going to select employment and case management and the start date. This is only upon initial entry of this service if you have not already done it. And then you're going to do all the information on this service. You're going to make sure the grant is correct. You're going to search your provider. Who's providing the service. It should be your local area. Some of the screens you'll see in here, I can't pick a local area because the test system doesn't have all the same information that you guys will have available to you. But I'm showing the information on these screen prints as just a guide to help you through it. It's not, don't take it as, oh, I got to pick that provider or anything like that. The end date, that would be like today's date. If you're entering this service, like, your start date and your end date would be the same. Current status would be open, your weekly hours, how many hours did it take you, to do whatever the particular service you're doing with them. Bridge activity, this is generally no for most of our stuff. I've never seen this yet. You would have to be signed up for some sort of particular bridge program type of thing to be able to answer that yes. You can put comments in here. It's not required. The required boxes are the ones with the red stars, of course. And then you would click save. And that would save your service record. And then I go into here. This is how you would search your providers. So I did this, and I just picked show all. And then I just picked a provider out there, and then here I filled in the information. So your successful completion, when you're, serving this person and you've completed this case management for them, you're going to mark successful completion for that, 5 hours. And, I just put a comment in here so you can see that you can put comments in there. And then you save it. And what it does then, it kicks you over. So it makes you add a case note. So I picked the program, case notes, whatever I did. There are several options. If you pick case notes supporting same-day service, make sure it is an actual active service that you are providing. We will cover active services when we cover the exiting of participants in a few weeks. Confidential, if you mark this confidential, only certain people can see that. I don't know. I believe I know the career planner can see it. I know we can't see them. So, be careful, don't mark anything confidential if it's not really a confidential case note. Note subject, I just put case management in here, but please put a specific note subject about what it is you really are doing with this person. These are just general information to show you the screens and what gets filled in. So save and return. And then you'll see here that the trade case management TAA service record has been added, and you've got your start and end date. Okay, so it was like the date that I did it. Now, if you're adding an additional episode, so you've already got this trade case management service record in there for this participant, you're going to add an additional episode to it. You're not going to add a new trade case management service. You are just adding an additional episode. And how you do that is through the list enrolled service. You're going to click on trade case management TAA, service provided, the blue. You can see, you can click on it because it's blue. It'll let you click on it. And you're going to just click on that. And that's going to take you back into that same screen that we were just in, that we filled out. And you are going to go down here and say, add additional episode to this particular record. And then it's going to take you over. All it's going to make you do is do a case note. You're going to put the contact date. What date are we doing this? You know, what's the note category? There's several drop-down options here that you can pick. There's confidential, no. You know, like I said, I put a note subject in here. It's just generic. Be specific about your note subject and be as detailed as possible in your case note about what is actually happening. And you're going to save and return. And then when you do that, you'll note your end date for your trade case management service has now updated to the date that I did that new episode, that I served that participant. This is what we want to see. We don't want to see multiple trade case management TAA services in here. We want to see the start date, and then every time you do one, it updates this end date. So go add additional episodes if you already have the service there for those participants. If this person is under the 97,999 or below, then under WIOA application, there is no entry unless there is a WIOA service that you're providing to them that is not, it's not being paid by trade, but it's being paid by WIOA, then you would add that information. So if you have a participant served under a petition 98,000 and above, the 2021R participants, on the trade application, there's no entry. WIOA, you're going to go through basically the same process. The only difference is the service is called Career Planning Case Management versus Trade Case Management. And it's done the same way. Under the WIOA application for the participant, you're going to do the same thing, the list enrolled services. And you can tell you're on the WIOA application because one way to tell is right here. It does not have that list TA status here under this application. So that's a good way to tell if you're on the right application. And then you're going to go through the same thing. Add enrolled service. If this is the initial time you're doing this, you're going to add it, and you're going to do one BC or one EC based on the type of grant that you have available to you that you're going to fund the WIOA services from. And you're going to pick service level, career services, your start date, and your activity is going to be career planning case management on the WIOA side. And you're going to complete all these required fields, you know, search for your provider, put your end date, so it would be whatever date you're doing it, your successful completion. You can add a comment, you don't have to, and click saved. And what it does, it'll take you over to do the case note as well. And your program would be WIOA in this case. Your note category you can pick, your confidential, your note subject, and your actual case note. And then you're going to do save and return. Now, note here, any additional WIOA funded services that are being provided to that participant, they need to be entered on the WIOA application on Iwds at the time you're providing them. You know, some of them get travel assistance, some of them get child care or other supportive services, you know, tires for their car, eyeglasses, you know, various other services that trade can't pay for. So once you add that information for that, here is what this service looks like on the WIOA side. It says Career Planning Case Management 1BC, and it has your start and end dates. If you already have this service record in there for the participant and you just need to add a new episode to it, you're going to follow that same process like we did with trade. You're just going to be on the WIOA application. So under your list enrolled services, you'll pick your Career Planning Case Management service. And when you get in there, you're going to do the add additional episode. It's going to take you over to fill out this information about the case note, just like the others, and your save and return. And when you do that, it will update that end date for that career service. I obviously don't have the screen in here to show you that. So once you've done your case management or anything, you can do all of these in any order you want. You know, just as long as they all get done before you submit it for approval. You know, you don't have to do your case management up front. You can do all this other stuff first. So it's up to you how you do this. But these are just all of the things that you need to complete in the system before you submit it to us. that you're going to need to update your TAA training criteria screen on the trade application in Iwds for the participant. If they're enrolling in training, then the first 6 questions here must be answered yes. And then you would answer no to the RTAA, unless they were going to enroll in RTAA. You can come back and change this if they enroll in RTAA at a later date. So these can all be yes at some point. Or if the person did RTAA and then now they're going into training, there's vice versa. So just make sure that if they are enrolling in training, then you must be able to answer these first 6 questions yes on this screen. And then you're going to save it once you get that completed. So to enter your occupational skills training, oh, Laura, great point, Laura. WIO follow-up must be on the WIO application since it is an allowable service under trade. Good. And that usually you don't open that up until you're done serving them under trade and they're switching over to WIOA and you're ready to do the follow-up services. So to enter your occupational skills training, you're going to go into your list enrolled services on your trade application for that participant. Again, add enrolled service. This is a lot of it's the same kind of thing you go through. It's just different options that you pick on different screens. Your title is TAA. Then you're going to do job training as your service level. And then your start date needs to be the start date that the training is going to begin. And you'll click next. And then you're going to select the type of training the participant is being enrolled in on this activity. So I printed this with just kind of a screen that shows you kind of the different things that you can select here. So occupational skills training is what you're going to pick here. You see there's a couple different options. If, for occupational skills training, if another source is paying for it, or if it's another state, like if you had an agent liable situation, you could pick that one. But occupational skills training is what I've selected for this one, and the start date. And you click next. So for trade, this question about ITA funded training should always be marked no. So just keep that in mind. For trade training, this is marked no. And you click next. And when you get in here, then you want to make sure your grant number is the most current grant that you have available to you in the system. If you're not sure about that, you can work with Crystal to get the correct grant. Most of you probably know right now we're rolling into, it will be 20 will be the first 2 numbers of the current grant number that you have available to you when you're enrolling someone in training. This does not get changed once you initially put it in for a participant, even if they transfer over to the next grant, during their training. You just leave it at whatever it was when you first enrolled them. So you're going to search your provider. You see there's boxes here that have the red little star by them. You have to fill those in. Again, bridge activities, no. So to search your provider, I just clicked on search providers, and I just clicked on show all. And, like I said, I don't have very many options available to me. And you will just pick whichever one is the most appropriate option for the provider of that occupational skills training that, you're selecting. Where are they going to school? So pick that particular one. So I picked one. And then you're going to search for the CIP code for that training the participant's attending. And you'll put in like occupation here and click search. And then you're going to pick whichever occupation is most applicable to the training program that they're training in. So, I put accounting, and you just pick whatever one is the most appropriate for that training. Then you're going to search for your ONET for the training. Put your occupation in here and click your search. And it will take you to this screen. And I picked that one. That was the only option that came up for me when I put in accounting as occupation. And when you click pick, it automatically takes you back out to that screen. This screen here. So you can see it put in my CIP code, it put my description in here, it put my ONET code in here. And then at this point, you're going to fill in your planned end date. So what is my planned end date for this training program for this participant? See the current status, pending approval. How many weekly hours right now is it estimated they're going to attend training? Most institutions are 12 hours for it to be full time. So keep that in mind that, if it's full-time, then, you probably need at least 12 hours here. You don't have to put any comments in if you don't want, but once you have all this information filled in and it's all accurate, make sure, look it over, make sure it's all correct. And then you're going to click save. What that does is it will put the occupational skills training service record out here, and with a start date, that should be the same date the training's beginning, and it will put it in a status of pending approval. When Susan, Lori, or I review this and we approve it, we will go into this training record and we will click this approve button. Well, it doesn't show up on yours, but we'll click an approve button and that'll change it to open at that point. So you just see that it does put it in pending approval status. If the participant is eligible for travel or subsistence reimbursement, this is when you will enter your travel and training or subsistence and training service record done in the same area under the list enrolled services. Again, on the trade application, if trade is paying for the travel for this person, if they're eligible for travel assistance under trade, you'll click enrolled service. Again, your title is TAA, your next, and you're going to pick job training for your service level, the start date that the person is going to begin traveling. This can be different than the start date of the training. If, like the first, like the first month or something, they're not going to travel until the second month of training. So just, whatever date the person is going to start traveling to their training, and click next. Then you're going to pick under activity, you'll pick either travel and training, or there is a subsistence in training. If someone is getting subsistence instead of travel, then that's what you would pick, but you would pick travel and training in this case and click next. And then you're going to select your provider. So I did with search providers. Generally, this is going to be the local area that you work for that you'll select here because you're the one that's going to be paying their travel. So here's what I did. I did a search and I did show all. So it just brought up, a screen of whatever. And I just picked one. You pick the appropriate one and it sends you back to that same screen and it puts it in here. And that's all you really have to do for travel on this screen. And then you will click save, which I don't have my save button, it's down here. And then you'll see that it puts the travel and training service record in here in a pending approval status as well. And then we will go in when we do the review and we will approve it. If, all of the stuff shows that the participant is eligible for travel and all of that. So if someone is, in addition to the travel, the occupational skills, say they're going to be doing part-time or distance learning, then you will need to do a couple of other steps to add those indicators in the system. And to do those, you will need to click on this under services, list part-time distance learning. So distance learning is online, basically, if you're not aware of what that is. So it's kind of, they're together, but then you list them as separately in here. So you would click on add part-time distance learning once you got in here and say they're going to, so you have an option of either part-time or distance learning here for status type. So you would pick the appropriate one, either they're going to go part-time or they're going to do online. If they're going to do both, then you would have to go in and put two different statuses in here. So for this one, I picked part-time training. What is the start date that they're going to be attending part-time training? The status, yes. It's either yes or no here. So we are adding a part-time training, so the status needs to be yes. And you would click save. And this is what the screen would look like once you hit save. So this is on 12/1/2021. This participant is starting part-time training. Status is yes. Deleted is no. If for some reason this person stopped attending part-time training, at some point I would go in and do the same thing. And for status, I would mark no. It would put another entry in here and the status would be no. So that basically ends the part-time training indicator in the system. So just keep that in mind. If someone does stop attending part-time, then go in and put the no. And it tells you who it was last updated by, when it was created, and that. Now, if at this point they're going to do online as well, then you can go in and you can just click this add part-time distance learning at this point and do it from that point, or you just return to go back. So I think I have it here for the distance learning. I started all over. list part-time distance learning. And you would do the same thing, add part-time distance learning in here. And to add the distance learning, then your status type, you would just change it to distance learning. You would select distance learning for status type, and you'll put in your start date, and then the yes indicator, and click save. And once you do that, you can see here that it put in the distance learning indicator here. Same thing if they were no longer attending online, you go in and do a new one, add a new one, and just click status no, and you know, distance learning. And at that point, you have your entries in Iwds, you have all of that information in there. Double check that you have done all of these steps and everything. You're ready to upload your documents. So you're going to upload your IEP or the IEP modification form, whichever is applicable in this case. You're going to do your training enrollment form, your work-based training agreement, if that is applicable, if it's an OJT or something. You're going to upload your transportation subsistence form, your Google Maps printout, your tracking form, and any other relevant documents that you have. But these are the forms we must see. If this says and, but it should be or. And to upload the documents in Iwds, how you do that is under this profile section, you do list all documents. Now make sure you're on the trade application when you do this for trade training. Sometimes people are on the wheel application and they do list all documents and they send it to us and we're like, well, there's no documents uploaded. Then they got to go upload them onto the trade application. So just be mindful that you're on the trade application for listing all documents and click on list all documents here on the application menu for the participant. And you're going to click add document when you get in here. And then you can click browse to go find your document, to search for it wherever you have it saved. And then you're going to select the type. Now the type it's a very lengthy list of documents. It has all of our documents in here. If it's on WorkNet, then it should be in this list. So this only goes up to like Form 9 right here, but you can see this this bar, it goes forever. Most people, when they're doing an initial approval for training, will upload all the documents as one document, and then they will select the Form 14 DCEO trade. It is listed just like this, trade individual employment plan as the type. You can do that. That's perfectly acceptable if you put all the documents in one, or if you upload them separately, then please select the appropriate name for the actual document. Be mindful of Form 5. There's two different versions here. You've got the Trade Transportation Subsistence Assistance. That is for people who are approved on or after September 21st of 2020. This other one here, the Trade Eligibility Determination for Trade Travel Assistance, is for people approved prior to September 21st of 2020. And even if they were approved prior to that date for travel and there was a break in their receipt of that travel and they go back to receiving it again, you still follow these rules that apply to this particular form, and you would use this particular form, the Determination for Trade Travel Assistance, for those people. If you got questions, you can ask. But know that there are two different ones, and it depends on the date that they were initially approved for travel. So just pick the appropriate one, you know, like we said, the 014, or you can pick each individual document separately. So once you select your type, and you would then click on upload. It's not showing here, but you click on upload or add document. Then it will upload it, and you'll see right here, this is what it will look like. It'll have this information right here. So like the Form 14, or it'll list all your documents separately that you've uploaded. And then once you've got your documents uploaded, you got all your entries in Iwds, your forms, everything like that, then you're ready to send an email to State Merit staff for approval. You're going to use the following format. If it is a revision modification, then you will find the last State Merit staff approval for this particular participant, and you're going to forward that email and then put your email subject line, new IEP or IEP modification, whichever it is, and occupational skills training approval request. Put customer first name, initial, and participant last name, and your OES. It helps us to find emails quickly if we need to. If a career planner leaves and someone else takes over that file and they have to do a modification later, people have sent us an email, oh, can you send me the last approval email for so-and-so? It makes it so much easier for us to find them if we have this in the subject line, and this is what we want to see. Don't just put some generic thing. We need the name of the participant, kind of what you're doing. And then the body of the email, can we have a new IEP, you know, if it's an IEP modification, you would put IEP modification and occupational skills training approval for, and you need to include all of this information for this particular request. You know, your justification statement, you know, needs to be, you know, what are you requesting? What's the justification for requesting this? Okay. And then this is the steps that State Merit staff will do. We're going to review your email, your Iwds entries, your uploaded documents. We're going to make sure all the entries are in there and the documents are complete, signed. If we do find issues, we're going to direct that email back to you. And we always do reply to all, so that everyone that's on the original email chain gets the response email from us. And then, you know, you'll send it back, make sure you reply to all. And then once all the issues have been addressed and you send that back to us saying they've been addressed, we're going to review those corrections. Once all the corrections are made and we think everything looks good, then we're going to approve the services statuses appropriate. And then we're going to forward that email chain back to you. We're going to reply to all. Just keep that in mind. Reply to all, reply to all, reply to all. So we all get the email. And we're going to say this is approved or whatever. And if for some reason approval is not possible, then we will direct you on what next steps to take. Now, that is the occupational skills training instructions. I have also created documents for all of the various types of training that you could enter. All of them look almost identical to this. There are some caveats to the prerequisite and remedial when you are entering those records. I do want to show you on the remedial.
Okay, and could you put that over there in the filing part? We filed.
Show you something remedial. Everything works the same way. Everything's the same. I basically just copied one document and then just put like the remedial information in here. Work-based learning, there's or work-based training, there's a prerequisite document. So it's separated. So if you need to just enter remedial, then you can pull out just the document to show you how remedial. But everything is all identical until you get to the actual entry of the service itself. And on remedial, the thing to keep in mind, as soon as I can find it, is all the case management's all the same. All the basic entries are all the same. It's just the type of service that you select when you are entering them. Further down here than I thought. Okay, so we got through the case management now. The training criteria, same thing. So when you're entering a remedial training service here, each remedial class that's being taken needs a separate remedial service. And those are done under list enrolled services, just like all of the other training service records. You're going to add your enrolled service, select TAA, job training is your service level, the start date of the remedial training. You're going to pick remedial training as your activity. ITA funded training is no, because it's trade. And then you're going to go through the whole thing of provider and all of that. When you get to the CIP code, you're going to search for that. And what you'll do in that, make sure that you put in that it's remedial math or remedial reading or whatever remedial thing it is. Make sure you put that in so it will select, it will give you options that selects the correct code here. Okay, because you can see how it says developmental remedial mathematics. So you would pick that. So just make sure that you put that in as the occupation, that particular description. And the same with like the ONET, because we need, we need this to show this for remedial mathematics. ONET code, a little bit different. The ONET code, when you're doing remedial training, you must match the ONET code that you have entered. If this person's in occupational skills training at the same time, then the ONET code for remedial and the occupational skills training must be the same. So if you've entered the occupational skills training, then you need to make sure that you select the right information for the ONET code for remedial, that it matches. It has to match. You could probably just put in the code. You wouldn't have to do a search if you've already got the occupational skills training in there. So just keep that in mind for remedial. That's the one kind of little weird thing about remedial that you have to do. Prerequisite, you also have to enter for each course it's taken. Also on remedial and prerequisites, down here in the comment box, you need to put the name of the actual course, the course name, number, whatever. It's Math 099. Put the name of the actual course that is being taken for the remedial service that you're entering, or the prerequisite. So that's just a little thing about remedial and prerequisite. Here it is. After you've entered it all, the remedial training is pending approval. And then, as you can see, I'd already entered the prerequisite here. Just keep those in mind. Everything else is the same. Yeah, you can do a remedial on its own. We have people that do that. So, you would just pick the ONET code that goes with that particular remedial training thing. But if you have occupational along with it, it has to match the same ONET code on remedial and occupational skills training service records. I don't feel like I need to go through all of the other ones unless you really want me to. Like, every one of them is identical to the same thing. These email things have different words here. They may have some different information down here. The work-based training has a little bit different things that it asks right here that need to be included in the email. If anyone wants to go through them, I certainly can. But I do want to cover this entering reemployment. If you have a custom participant that's in trade, and for some reason, at the point, some point during their whole thing, oh, now Adobe's not responding. Okay, it is now. If they become reemployed while you're working with them, then there are a series of steps that you need to take to enter that reemployment, whether or not that affects their training plan or not. You still need to enter the reemployment. So if they do return to work, then what you need to do is, this one's a little different. You do this through the customer menu, and you will click on employment history under the customer menu for the participant, and you will add job when you get to the list work history. And you're going to fill out all the information here. Now, keep in mind, you will not have a DES ID or a TAA petition because this is not a dislocation job that you're entering. Employer name, if you know it, I think you can enter it here, or you can do a search for it. So employer name, I just did a search. I just entered a name, and I picked whichever entity that was appropriate for the person. And then you can do your search for your NAICS code for the new employment and industry. And you pick whichever one's appropriate for the job that they are now working at. Same with the ONET. You'll do a search for the ONET code for the employment, enter your occupation, and you're going to pick the job that matches what they're doing. And then you'll see that all this is all filled in. So I've got my employer name, the employer status. They've entered employment. The start date was this date. This is their job title. This is the address of the employer, their contact name, phone number, what's their wage per hour, how many hours a week, kind of their job duties. Is this their primary occupation? Yes, no. Is it a dislocation job? Well, no, because they just entered employment. Self-employed, no. Family member, fireman, no. There's no layoff reason. There's no severance pay. There's no layoff. They would not have received trade rapid response services because this is not a dislocation job. So no date needs to go here, and this needs to be answered no. It's not a petition. This is TAA return to work. They are a trade participant that has returned to work. However, this is not ATAA, RTAA employment. In this case, they've not applied for RTAA. So that would be no. And then here's where the NAICS and the ONET comes in after you've done your search. So this is, you would fill this all in for that new employment that they've received, and you would click save. And then you'll see here, it shows up right here. So there's the employment date. It's not a dislocation job, and there will not be a DETS ID for them because they're currently still employed. If, you know, they leave that job, you can go back in here and update that record with their last date of employment, if that's the case. And then you need to enter a return to work status record. And where you do that is under your list TAA status screen on your application menu for the participant, and you would add TAA status. And you're going to pick return to work as your status. You're going to put the start date. This start date should be the same date as the employment start date over here on your employment record that you just entered right here, this start date. That date should match the return to work status. So we have a lot of people that mess that up. They put this date as the date they're entering this status, but this should really be the same date as the employment start date on the job record. So keep that in mind, that, you know, those dates need to match. There's no status end date. This is not a waiver, so there's no waiver reason, no suspension request reason or cease participation reason. Comment in here, you know, participant return to work at such and such in full-time employment. There's no IEP amount. There's no revocation reason. The TAA return to work. Is this part-time? Yes or no? So is the employment part-time? Yes or no? This needs to be answered because it sends notification to IDES. So this person's back to working full-time. If they're in training, then obviously their TRA would stop, but it does send a notification to IDES that they use for their determinations for TRA, UI, and all of that stuff. There's none of these extenuating circumstances need to be filled in because they are not applicable to this situation. So once you get this information in here, all you need is your status, your start date, you can put a comment and you answer this question, then you would save. And then it puts your return to work status in here. You will never see an end date on a return to work status or a waiver revoke status. So if you see that, don't worry about that. If you know, want a waiver revoke status or return to work, you will not see a end date. The in-training end date will show up once the person completes training. So that's what your status screen will look like once you do the return to work. You add your case management services just like you do with all of the other stuff, you know, the WIOA or trade application. We've been through all of that on how to do all of that information. I think that's probably all I've got on here. These do not require IEP modifications. The only way unless they were doing like an RTAA or something like that, then you would send it in as a part of that. That would all be entered as a part of that whole process of requesting the approval for RTAA or ATAA if you're doing that job history thing like that. Now, if that employment though does affect their training plan, like then they're going to have to shift to part-time training. That is an IEP modification. So as long as it doesn't affect their training plan and what they're doing and that they can complete in the same amount of time and they're not switching from part-time full-time, then that doesn't require an IEP modification. Just make sure you enter the stuff. But if it does affect the training plan in any way, then you will need an IEP modification as a part of that process. So anybody have any, unless you want to go through all those other documents, I don't think you want to hear me talk about those because it's the same stuff that is in the occupational. It just changes on the different types of entries that you select from the drop-down menus. Like you'll pick the appropriate training, prerequisite or remedial, or you'll pick the appropriate work-based training option like OJT or something like that. But all of the rest of it is identical. The case management service entry, the submission to state merit staff, just the words kind of change around a little bit and the information in the body of the case note. But they're all in those documents. They will be posted at the site where we have all of the training information along with these copies of these forms, but do not use these versions of the forms when you're doing new forms. Please go to WorkNet to get the most current version of the form. The 14A is under revision right now. We have a few things we want to add to it and just update. I will work on getting that posted by tomorrow out on WorkNet to get that updated for you. Other than that, I have nothing else. Now, Mike, we requested a question earlier today before training. If a person is only requesting RTAA, is there any special activity or service record to add a 1DC case management record for the WIOA application? We will respond to you, Mike, in your email, and we will put it on as a part of this chat as well, so everyone else can see it too. Any other questions? Well, if there are none, I appreciate all of your time. We have one more session this week on Thursday, and that will be covering the attendance, benchmarks, breaks in training, and IEP modifications. That one will be pretty lengthy. It does start at 9:30, just like the other ones did. And then after that one, then you get a break from listening to me talk for a couple of hours once a week or so until after the first of the year. And then you only have 3 more times you have to listen to me. So I guess that's good news for you. But I guess since there are no more questions, I guess, Kirsten, I guess we are done, and you can send me the chat and we will get that posted, and we'll get all the documents posted for you guys on the site. Either today or tomorrow.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Everyone have a great rest of your day.